Do you know what she said?
Let them eat cake.
Who took the bomb?
We're getting screwed, man. Every time we turn around, we're getting screwed. Oh, the revolution's going to be through podcasting for sure. That's the only way we talk. It's the little guys that take the brunt of everything. It's got to stop. Peasants, man. We're just peasants. Every one of us. You watch those old movies, you see the peasants in the background with the kings and queens walking around. We're those people. We're those people. Good morning, peasants. Welcome to another episode of the Peasants Perspective. Thank you for joining me again this morning. We'll make my sound better by getting this tab closed. And did that make it better? I think so. Man, I can't tell. Someone tell me I'm 5x5. It's hard for me to know in here. I've got feedback coming from like 9 places. Oh, good morning, Carleets from Texas. Good morning, Pony Boy. Great to have you guys. We've got a good little start this morning. Gosh, every day there's so much stuff happening. Oh my gosh. It's like Christmas every day. Yesterday, Donald Trump went to the UN. And the best way to judge that is by the responses, which we'll be talking about later today. I'm going to let the room kind of fill in. And I think I got all the important people here. I see Ponyboy, Carleets, Farazier. Looks like we got the important people. I want to play this clip. This is from Charlie Kirk. This is a longer clip. This is almost a 7-minute long clip. Charlie Kirk is talking about, this was last summer. This was filmed last summer in a private meeting before some event. And he's talking about how the outcome of this election is undetermined and that we're in, I'm going to use the word war. Okay. And he understood clearly the battle we were up against. I actually found this really refreshing. There was a time earlier on where I felt like Charlie Kirk was just one of them good old boys. He was just one of those grifters that kind of had a good little setup, took advantage of the opportunity to go talk on campuses. And there wasn't a lot of depth to him, right? It was just kind of debate me. Anybody can do that. I was a high school debater. I can debate. But the thing that changed for him was at some point he started to understand the underlying civilizational war, the underlying cultural war. And this is what a lot of us conservatives were like, hey, policy comes and goes, but as long as our civilization is intact, we'll make it. Charlie Kirk realized that our civilization itself, the foundation was being chipped away, and where it is and exactly kind of how we arrive at where we are as a country, you have to look historically and you have to understand the nature of power and what power does. So let's play this video. Again, it's longer. I don't always like to play really long videos like this, but this one's rich. It's really good. So I'm going to go ahead and play it, and I might interject here a time or two as we get going. But anyways, I think this needs to set the stage for where things are going, and given that Charlie Kirk has just been assassinated for this exact belief system, it's worth listening to.
A moment where this is the most consequential historical climax, since the American Civil War. That's not BS. That's not spin. Yeah, this is even. Yeah, this is. I mean, 1776 Tea Party. Yeah. Yeah, and it's a question, right? And I have no idea if we're going to win or not. So yeah, you have a thought? We're trying, man. Why? So that's a good question.
I like what you're the only one that I see.
Well, it's because thank you, and I'm not the only one. But let me tell you why. By the grace of God, I am not in federal prison. By the grace of God, I'm not indicted. That's not a joke. That's what these people do. Okay. Well, look, you're right, and I pray for me every day, and pray, and you should, because there's only a few of us that actually play offense. James O'Keefe plays offense. Yes. But what happened to him? Yeah. They removed him from his organization. He's under criminal investigation by the FBI and the Westchester DA. Steve Bannon plays offense. He's going to go to federal prison next month. Tucker Carlson plays offense. They took him off air. Any player that plays, Donald Trump plays offense. He's facing 600 years in federal prison. That's why we don't play offense. How about this? We have 16 literally amazing senior citizens that have done such good for our country in Michigan that are facing the rest of their life in prison because they signed a document to become an alternate elector. Most people don't even know about this story. This story was buried. I'm going to talk about this tonight. These are 16 senior citizens. I'll tell you about Rose Rook, 81 years old, from Paw Paw, Michigan. She signed a piece of paper to become an alternate elector, her constitutional right with historical precedent. She's facing 120 years in federal prison. 81 years old. She has $30,000 to her name, and her husband died 10 years ago. And the Michigan AG is trying to show her as a domestic terrorist. She can't defend herself. The whole weight of the world is the cruelty is the point. We are dealing with savages. This is not normal. This is ultra revolution time. Like, they are eating the country from within. The problem.
I got to unmute myself. So this is one of the things that I saw, right? January 6th, right? You're like, okay, I have a right to take a stand. People want to know, there's election fraud. Boy, was I wrong, right? I was facing 40 years in prison. Obviously, I got 7 years and 3 months was the ultimate, where it ultimately settled out. But he's right here, right? They play smash mouth. They play for keeps. They put you in prison. He was saying he's lucky he's not been indicted, right? He understood clearly what he was up against, what he was fighting for. I don't know that I comprehended that he understood this as deeply as some of us, maybe I've taken for granted the thought that J6ers were in the trenches, that we understood this a little bit more clear than other people, I truly felt, hey, if they've come for me, they will come for you. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time when your number comes up on the censorship lottery, right? You're going to get taken out.
Is they preempt us against offense, but that is not an excuse. We all have to play offense. We have to take the initiative. But here's the thing, we are not good offensive players. I'll prove it to you.
That's absolutely
because conservatives definitionally are defensive. We are conserving against their offense, right? So like by our temperament is to build businesses and churches and be agreeable. Our temperament, we don't think like revolutionaries. Well, we got to change that. I know, but not enough. My next book is literally called Right-Wing Revolution. Like, I'm trying to make people think in a way where we're trying to stop their refounding of America. Here's the good news. If you want like the good news of all this, the founders have given us this unbelievable opportunity. The fact that we still have some semblance of a constitution gives us hope. Like, if we did not have the founders, God bless them. Like, I'll give you an example, the Electoral College. If it was not for the Electoral College, this is game, set, match, we're done. Now we have a chance, right? A collection of states. It's still going to be very hard, right? But there's still hope, is what I'm saying. There's a roadmap. The founders saw this. They were like, we're going to make it really hard, not impossible, really hard to destroy this place, right? They put so many checks and balances in that think about how much we've survived, right? The fact that we still have fight, and honestly, it's a gift from Madison, Hamilton, and Jay of how they saw this, right? Like that, I tell people, the North Star is our founding fathers. The North Star is our own documents. The North Star is the Declaration of the Constitution. Like, that's what we're trying to get back to. We're trying to defend that. I want to win. No, but I want to win. But why do you think we will win?
I believe in the spirit of the human, just the humanness of that we will step up when we have to step
So this is so interesting. I totally disagree because, and let me tell you, I got in a debate with an atheist. So he and it ties to this. Like, he said, okay, Charlie, I can't believe in God after the Holocaust. And I said, I can't believe in humanity after the Holocaust.
Yeah.
That is an interesting perspective. I can't believe in God after the Holocaust versus I can't believe in humanity after the Holocaust. Charlie Kirk is going to go on a point here, and I totally get this, right? He's like, listen, if the systems aren't set up right, humanity will fail us every time. If you think you're going to lean on God to come and save you, guess what? The humans will kill you first. That's the whole thing here. We can't sit back and go, oh, well, we know God wins and Jesus will come and save us and it'll all work out. Tell that to Pol Pot. Tell that to Stalin. Tell that to Hitler. Tell that to any number of dictators that have come and spent their time, right? When the hammer hits the back of your head, that's it. There's nothing after that, right? Who knows? Maybe you get saved, maybe you don't, but this is over. Whatever this is, it's over. And so the atheists are like, well, we don't believe in God. We don't want to base a society around God. And Charlie Kirk's the opposite. It's like, I don't want to base around a society around humanity, right? It's the opposite.
I said, I still believe in God. I've lost all faith in humans. So I want you to think about that, right? I have zero faith in humanity.
But look what humans did to Christ.
Yes, I mean, they didn't stop Mao. They didn't stop Hitler. They didn't stop Mussolini. They didn't stop. I'm not saying, you might be right. Now,
I'm an optimist.
But I am too, but I don't do hopium, right? I don't do hope and opium feels good. It's really bad for you. I'm right in the middle. I'm like, we could win triumphantly, or this could get really bad. And I'm just being honest. Like, I don't think what I'm getting at, and I'm not trying to, we're having fun, right? I don't think our victory is inevitable. I don't.
We'll have to work for it.
Yeah, and rededicate everything. And by the way, that last paragraph of the Declaration, I think, just rings in our soul. Our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor, that's everything, right? And we are not at a place where Americans are willing to do that, right?
Yes, we are.
No, we're not. Well, you are, but it takes 3 to 5%. If you can get to 3 to 5%, you could save the country. So that's the good question, right? Are we there? I'm not being pessimistic. I'm being real, right?
But what's the method?
What is this?
That's what's missing.
Okay, so 3 to 5% and you save the country. Consider that for just a second. Are there 3 to 5% of the country that are Antifa sympathetic? Are we close enough to a situation where that 3 to 5% isn't in conservative control? It's not in the bag. It's not just a matter of waiting for the men who wanted to be left alone finally stand up and do something. Where are we at in that threshold, right? The outcome is undetermined. I have said that many, many times. The outcome is absolutely undetermined. So, for example, you've got this Ryan Ruth guy, right? He's the assassin down in Florida that tried to wait for Donald Trump outside of the Palm Springs resort. And before we play this video on him, I want to refer back to what Charlie Kirk said about the spirit of 1776, because there's something else just before 1776, and that is 1775. If you still haven't tried 1775 coffee, now's your shot. The 1775 starter kit just dropped, only 1,000 units. You're getting the bold, dark roast that hit hards, the smooth medium roast, and the vitality mushroom coffee for clean energy and laser focus, no crash. All single origin, small batch, toxin free, and mold free. Plus, you're also getting a gold spoon clip because freedom isn't scooped with plastic. A frother strong enough to stir up your coffee and your mother-in-law's opinions, and black 1776 tumbler. $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for $99. This is for the ones who've been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble, wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler alert, it is. Go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something just like Rumble does. Okay, so Ryan Ruth yesterday was fully convicted on all the counts against him. And I want to share this with you because Mike Benz kind of goes into a little bit of depth on exactly what happened here with Ryan Ruth. This trial was a sham. I don't know how else to put it, right? He goes to trial. He's in pretrial detention the whole time. Totally expected considering the gravity of the crime and the nature of it. However, through the whole thing, apparently he doesn't get along with his defense attorneys. Not the most unusual thing in the world. He ends up firing them and wants to represent himself. Simultaneously to this, large batches of evidence are being sealed by the judge with orders saying things like, this information would be devastating to national security and whatnot, which means Ryan Ruth himself was not allowed to see this evidence, which in my opinion creates an appealable issue depending on what was in that evidence. And his defense was apparently pretty scattered. It's pretty rough stuff. And I think a lot of that has to do with who he could potentially be. This is a tricky one. This is a really tricky one because you listen to like what we're about to listen to with Mike Benz, exposing how Ryan Ruth likely was some type of USAID, CIA, State Department cutout, while simultaneously you hear a story from his daughter and from a few of the people that knew him that he might have just been a crazy wacko. So it's really hard to know on this one. Let's listen to this breakdown.
So Ryan Routh was basically, the 37th leg of a CIA paramilitary recruiting operation to top up human meat fodder in Ukraine. And he was working with the State Department to try to convert these passports into no-look visas for these fighters. And he was flagged by Customs and Border Patrol in June 2023 for this operation. It was referred to DHS HSI, the same group that basically is implicated, at least in an indirect fashion, but potentially even in a direct fashion in both assassination attempts. HSI refused to interrogate Ryan Routh when he returned to the country, despite being flagged to do so by Customs and Border Patrol. The guy has been arrested almost 100 times in his life, but never spent a day in jail. And most importantly, 2.5 weeks ago, this Justice Department made a public statement saying it is seeking an indefinite delay of the trial of Ryan Routh because of complex evidence. And you know why that is? It's because the complex evidence will reveal that Ryan Routh was working his way through a CIA, DOD, State Department operation to militarily recruit terrorist fighters into Ukraine, which is a major international incident. If revealed, the Justice Department is protecting the CIA and the DOD because actually interrogating the sources of funding behind Routh, actually interrogating his human network is going to implicate the intelligence community and the Defense Department, and that is the second job of the DOJ. The first job is putting away the bad guys, but the second job is to CYA, cover the arse of the intelligence community and the DOD so that the blob's interests are constantly protected and concealed from the American people who could oversee them.
I think the tricky thing about this particular one is it makes me look at this like, okay, Thomas Crooks climbed up on a roof and was killed. He was a teenager, totally kind of a lone wolf. His social media was already scrubbed before he climbed up on that roof. His family kind of disappeared into the wind. And we didn't hear much from like his classmates or anybody who knew him. Oh, he was interested in shooting, and oh, he was a little bit of a loner. You know, it was kind of a classic lone wolf scenario. You get to Ryan Routh, and it starts to make you wonder, right? He doesn't seem like a very high-end operative. He's kind of like a disheveled drunk uncle who shows up at a protest, is wildly passionate about weird things like Ukraine, right? And fighting in Ukraine for freedom, this abstract idea. And you're like, what's going on here? And as Mike Benz describes, he's the 37th leg, right? He's way down there. He's a loose end. He's a guy that's kind of on the periphery, that's not ever in on any of the plans, but he's fodder, right? This is one of your useless idiots that's just going to do whatever. This is the category that a lot of January 6ers fell into. I hate to say it. There's a lot of useless idiots that kind of just got caught up in it. There were some there that went to take principled stands, and there were some there that went because they were in a psyop. There was well over 100 people that were Antifa that were in on it, that were part of January 6th, that were prosecuted right alongside the Patriots. And who knows, right? Did they get paid? Did they just get pushed there? Or were they unsuspectingly show up thinking it was going to be like every other protest they go to, where they, have a little party and then go smoke some weed in the parking lot afterwards and call it fun? I don't know. It's hard to know. But he was convicted on all 5 counts yesterday, and likely I cannot see him getting less than a life in prison, which is really, really sad. His whole defense kind of hinged around, I didn't pull the trigger, right? It hinged around, I didn't pull the trigger. So yesterday when Donald Trump went to, let me just double check here. Yeah. Yesterday when Donald Trump went to the UN, he was met with a little bit of resistance. The Secret Service right now is investigating whether Trump was sabotaged by UN staff. What happened was Donald Trump and Melania went to go get on the escalator, which was working just fine, and right the moment they stepped on it, it came to a screeching halt. Almost kind of like, causing them to trip, like they'd gone up like 6 inches and all of a sudden it came to a screeching halt. Secret Service is investigating allegations that President Trump was deliberately sabotaged by United Nations staff during his visit to the body's headquarters on Tuesday. The investigation comes after the Sunday Times reported that UN workers joked about turning off an escalator before the General Assembly meeting on Tuesday. An escalator broke down as Melania Trump, the First Lady, stepped onto it. It was one of several glitches that raised suspicions about whether Trump was targeted by people inside the institution he so strongly criticized. So what ended up happening was they trip, right? They just walk up the escalator, and then he goes to get on to give his speech, and the teleprompter doesn't work. And so he talks about that. Back to what Charlie Kirk said, right? There is a huge division here. This is a struggle for power. This is as consequential as the Civil War. They hearken it back very much to the principles of 1776. I actually kind of ascribe to that line of thinking in the fact that we're back to fighting the same underlying principles. I think in the Civil War, we fought a little bit more of an internal war over, I don't know, I hate to go into without putting enough thought into this, but basically over process, right? How is the United States going to work, right? Versus the 1776 was about throwing off tyranny. I feel like we're at that point right now. We're doing Boston Tea Party stuff every week, right? We're like, man, these taxes, man, these fees, man, these burdens, man, these these mask mandates, these vaccine mandates. It's too much. And all throughout the government and in like every little spot, you'll find these little pockets where you've got resistance. And these people aren't just resistance. These people are straight up obstructionists. So for example, this gentleman right here, Will Rosenberg, United States Attorney at the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Florida. Turns out this Will Rosenberg, this nice fine gentleman here, exclusive, this is coming from Natalie Winters, Assistant U.S. Attorney Will Rosenzweig secretly ran an anti-Trump blog for years, attacking Trump, mocking his supporters, and even plotting obstruction tactics. He is an attorney for the the Department of Justice. He smeared him as mentally unfit white supremacist. Now he's using government lawfare to lawfare against MAGA. Looks like we have a thread here. Let's see if we can read it. According to his own Facebook post, since January 2016, current Assistant United States Attorney Rosenweig has been running a now private blog called Hosts of Air, where he has been publishing vicious attacks on President Trump and his supporters. Rosenweig joined the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of Florida at the end of Trump's first term and still works there today. Rosenweig wrote an opinion piece for The Hill in 2016, which likewise identifies him as the author of the Hosts of Air blog. In the piece, Rosenweig argued, Donald Trump would be a disastrous president for a myriad of unprecedented ways. He has a hair trigger in a world with infinite provocations. He threatens to upend the post-war security regime that has thus far averted world war, and his explicitly racist policies on immigration, law enforcement, and combating foreign terrorism threaten domestic unrest and foreign upheaval. The only way to brush aside such profound threats to our national security and tranquility is to elevate the importance of something else. Although Rosenweig's blog posts are now private, many of them are available on the Internet Archive. There are too many posts to choose from. Here are a few highlights. The rot to the DOJ goes deeper than anyone can imagine. The wrong stuff. It's been clear for some time now that Donald Trump is mentally unfit to be president of the United States. This is from his blog. This observation has little to do with recognizing his profound lack of knowledge, expertise, or interest in the job, to say nothing of his gusto for dousing America's smoldering racial and religious divisions with kerosene, or his penchant for looting the government's coffers for his own private gain. All of that is true. And supporters, the years-long insistence from Democrats and half-hearted anonymous leaks from timid Republicans that Trump is fundamentally unable to perform the minimal functions of the job, which has become increasingly clear since he took his oath of office, however, is something even more serious. Trump is exhibiting significant mental deterioration and instability. This is a lawyer at the Department of Justice. This is a lawyer at the Department of Justice that, should you live in his area, you just might find yourself under indictment sitting across the table from this gentleman. So it goes on and on. Donald Trump and his minions don't know the first thing about running the government. If only experience, indecision, and incompetence were all, it just goes on and on and on. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, no, we don't know who's going to win. You know why? Because we don't know who's going to be the key figures in all of this, right? Donald Trump, we've got 6 days left to indict James Comey for one of the myriad of things he's done that merit being indicted. And the statute of limitations is probably going to run out. And why? Because you've got attorneys deep in the DOJ that are just like this, one after another after another. Think about it. You know, the idea that, it's just a couple of attorneys on these cases. This guy's down in Florida. You know, he may as well have been running a J6 case, or, been on Jack Smith's staff. May as well have been. Why not? Right. Instead, you're going to see this guy when you're, being targeted for whatever. Right. That's the guy. That's your local assistant United States attorney. Very, very not cool. Stephen Miller understands this. Stephen Miller understands the battle we're in. And in many ways, he's the only person that's just pounding the table on the civilization struggle we're in. I'm so glad he's literally at Trump's right hand. He's the deputy chief.
We are gratified that justice was done in this case, and that this heinous, evil, terrorist monster was convicted for his attempt to not only murder the now 47th president of the United States, but to wage, in so doing, a campaign of terrorism against all Americans. But as you mentioned, this country is dealing with a rising threat of radical left-wing terrorism. There were two very nearly successful attempts on President Trump's life. A bullet hit President Trump in the head. It was only centimeters away from taking his life. This second attack that we're talking about today, the president was moments away from walking directly into that line of fire. Of course, the healthcare CEO was brutally gunned down by another self-described so-called anti-fascist that was then celebrated by other self-described anti-fascists, who, of course, are really communist revolutionaries. And the heartbreaking assassination of our dear friend Charlie Kirk while speaking at a college campus, billions of dollars in property damage by Antifa and other far-left rioters, organized criminal campaigns of doxing and violent intimidation, 1,000% increase in violent attacks on law enforcement. These are not isolated incidents, Will. It is part of an organized campaign of domestic terrorism. It's sophisticated, it is well-funded, it is carefully orchestrated, and it's designed to prevent the lawful democratic process from occurring in this country through violent political means. And so President Trump took decisive action yesterday by formally declaring Antifa to be a domestic terror organization. And then as we speak, under President Trump's leadership and direction, we are working on a broader counterterrorism strategy to fight domestic terror in this country, to uproot, dismantle, defund, and destroy these terrorist networks inside the United States.
Okay, so we have to be fair, right? Anything that we empower the government to do eventually can be turned around on us. This is one of those instances where they, and when I say the they, I mean the people that are ideologically opposed to me, right? The people who supported the overthrow of the United States government in 2020, not the people who tried to prevent it. I fall into the latter camp, okay? Someone has to win. And in that world, if someone has to win, the way that you're defeated is your own tools get used against you, right? You either win completely or you create the tools, hand them over to your enemy, and then they get used against you. This is one of those situations where the left is going to reap what they've sown. They're going to reap what they've sown. The ability for Donald Trump to declare Antifa a terrorist organization is no different than when January 6th was, and everybody involved in it was put on those terrorist lists. Okay. They created the tools. They created the precedent. They normalized going into suburban neighborhoods and raiding houses. I hate to say that. I don't want to see that happen to anyone. I would much rather people just walk down to the DOJ and go face their, take their licks up front, go face it down, just like I did. I would love it for people to do that. Unfortunately, this is where they've sat, and they're having the same thing on the freedom of speech front, right? The whole Jimmy Kimmel getting taken down, which apparently now he's going to get his job back, but now the actual carriers aren't going to show it. So basically ABC is going to stream on Disney, or Jimmy Kimmel's going to be on Disney Plus. If you'd like to catch Jimmy Kimmel now, you can now catch it streaming on Disney Plus. That's basically where it's at. Okay. They've taken it off the majority. I think I saw 2/3 of the rate of the TV stations that were going to carry it. So, good luck with Jimmy Kimmel. Here's, now I got to remember which one it was here. Right. Okay. So here is the CNN, right? And they're still having a fit over this freedom of speech and the government is infringing on freedom of speech and Jimmy Kimmel. They're still having a panic over this thing. Well, they got kind of laid straight on CNN.
Should you be able to speak your mind without retribution from the government? This is a government that is controlling law firms, media companies, educational institutions, and silencing opposition at the end of the day. And it's because of the money on the table from Nexstar, their billion-dollar merger, and that Disney lost their $4 billion in market cap that is causing all of this action. They're afraid of the government. Is exactly what Donald Trump did.
Who was silenced? Nobody's silenced. We're not.
Jimmy Kimmel was taken off the air. You have universities afraid to speak their mind. You have research being completely defunded.
We talk about the blue and the red division. Every single one of the reasons why the FCC has a role is because these are broadcast stations with a monopoly that was granted by the government.
Do you feel good about
No,
Do you feel
and I
about
would
media?
hate it if the federal government came in and said, you may not say that. The reason why Jimmy Kimmel got himself into the first place is he was repeating a lie believed by 1 in 3 Democrats that the person who assassinated Charlie Kirk
He did not
had
say that.
right of center beliefs.
He did not say that.
We can parse his verbiage all day long. If he comes out and says, listen, that was not what I was trying to say, thank you. Fantastic. I appreciate that, Mr. Kimmel. The problem is that is believed. And we have spent way more time treating Jimmy Kimmel as a victim than the person who was shot and killed in front of their wife and children.
Let me ask you a question. If Joe Biden took down a prominent right-wing personality on TV for what he or she said, would you endorse that?
You're hypothetical if the Biden administration went and jawboned, let's say, social media platforms.
I'm talking about a similar allegory of someone on TV
hundreds of conservatives.
Will you answer my question?
No,
Tucker
that's
Carlson.
literally what the administration that you served did. Google just released
a broadcast
all of
TV
the
host
components.
taken down for words that they say.
Tucker Carlson!
I will not approve
Red
the
event
merger.
substance!
FCC,
The list
they
goes
have
on
done
and
that
on.
plenty of times on the right.
Was the
There's a
FCC
reason
chair saying we're
why.
going to do this the easy way or the hard way like a mobster?
Your
Were they?
administration
Were they?
deplatformed and kicked off of social media. You want to talk about actually silencing? Having any single public outlet that you have unallowed to broadcast something, right? Jimmy Kimmel could go on MSNBC tomorrow. He's going back on ABC tonight. This man has not been silenced.
Bar, yes.
Charlie Kirk's been silenced because he's dead. A lot of conservatives were silenced on social media platforms because the government threatened those social media companies. Facebook, Google, Twitter. You can go down all the list. YouTube, again, just acknowledged to Congress today that they did that at the behest of the Biden administration.
Yeah, so that tees up kind of our next direction we're going to is Google, kind of like Facebook did last year, did a big mea culpa. Oops, I'm sorry. Oh, we didn't mean to censor. But before we get to that, we need to do a little look back in time. Because here's the CNN guy going, oh, name one person that got thrown off a TV station, right? They want to clarify. They name one night show host that was conservative that got taken off. Are there any? Gutfield? Is there one? Right? There's one night show host that's conservative, right? It doesn't matter. The point is censorship using the government. So let's just play some highlights of different media figures and Democrats that celebrated censorship of conservatives. Oh, but you guys are going to want to see the share screen on this.
Twitter banned the president permanently. Oh, damn. They took away his precious.
Well,
Twitter.
Facebook upheld their ban of Donald Trump today for at least another 6 months.
It is so funny to watch the Trump supporters and the Republicans melt down over Tucker Carlson getting fired from Fox News.
Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News. Couldn't have happened to a better guy.
Fox News Media and Tucker Carlson have agreed to part ways.
Fox News has severed bow ties with Tucker Carlson after all these years.
They evaluated whether or not Trump's tweets violated Twitter policy. They said, no, we could just label it as incitement to violence anyway to get the job done.
Donald Trump's Twitter account just got suspended. Now, the first thing that we need to note is that this is very, very funny.
And even with Twitter, you cannot find actual evidence of any direct government censorship of any lawful speech.
Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg claims he was pressured by the White House to censor content related to COVID-19 during the pandemic.
And direct law enforcement to counter this extremism. We will hold social media platforms accountable.
And when you look at what Tucker Carlson and some of these other folks on Fox do, it is very clearly incitement of violence.
There are Americans who are engaged in kind of propaganda, and whether they should be civilly or criminally charged would be a better deterrent.
To stop Tucker Carlson from going on tonight, now that he's seen how he is perverted and slimed the truth.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our...
Okay. So the reason we have to remind ourselves of that, there is a natural justice to things, and it's not your business. I need you to understand this. Okay. In the universe, the law of the jungle is an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, right? It is justice. The ledger must balance. This is the whole point of the book, Count of Monte Cristo. The Count recognizes his individual, his divine role in providence to bring justice. And the way that justice is brought about is the people who hurt the Count reaped exactly what they sowed. The very thing they'd done to him, he set up a situation where they did those same things to themselves. He revealed their hearts to where whatever they conspired to do to put him away and ruin his life for their personal gain, they had to cash the check. It came back and they ended up having that exact same thing happen to them. False accusations, taking of wealth, taking of the women, right? The whole thing, it just boom, 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 right down the line. That is the law of nature. God will take care of that to whatever degree he will, right? However, for the people that are in that arena, let them use the tools they have. The Democrats are going to reap what they've sown. The Republicans over the years have reaped what they've sown. That's the game they choose to play. That's the wicked will slay the wicked situation there, right? I'm concerned about we the peasants, okay? We got to watch that happen. I am not going to be like, I don't want you to arrest Barack Obama because I didn't like it when you arrested Trump. No, it's actually the opposite way around. It was nice to say, I don't want you to arrest a president. It was nice when Trump said, we're going to let Hillary Clinton go because she didn't want the wife of a president in prison. And it's so unfair, but it's just the way it is, right? That was the time for mercy and stuff like that. Now you've got to get even. Remember, we already knew that Facebook participated in the censorship regime. We already know Twitter did. They were all getting directly asked by the United States government, specifically the White House and the Department of Justice, to censor people. So yesterday, Google put this out, but just literally 30 minutes before Google released that at the behest of House Representative Jim Jordan, Joe Scarborough said this.
Well, and what some Republicans did seem to understand, Ted Cruz certainly understood it, that yes, right now this is being used against speech that Republicans don't like. But Willie, Republicans aren't going to be in the White House forever. So they understood. Ted Cruz warned about it. Others warned about it. What we're doing to them right now, they will do to us when a Democrat. This is short-sighted. It makes no sense. Well,
30 minutes later, after Joe Scarborough's like, hey, whatever you're doing to these Democrats, they're going to do it to you. Turns out it's the other way around. The Republicans are finally doing to the Democrats what the Republicans are doing to the Democrats what the Democrats did all along. Google admits censorship under Biden, promises to end bans of YouTube accounts of thousands of Americans censored for political speech. Listen to this. Today, thanks to the oversight of Chairman Jim Jordan, Google commits to offer all creators previously kicked off YouTube due to political speech violations on topics such as COVID-19 and elections an opportunity to return to the platform. Google also admitted the following to House Judiciary Committee. Now, this was run through Jim Jordan. You need to understand Jim Jordan is a shill for Google. He is a shill for big tech. This is the main criticism that people like Mike Davis levy against Jim Jordan. Oh, you're all great. You roll up your sleeves and you know the Russiagate thing from beginning to end. But when it comes to Google and big tech, Jim Jordan, kind of like Thomas Massey, stands in the way of balancing the budget. Jim Jordan stands in the way of breaking up big tech. All along the way, he does these little things where he allows big tech to give him a culpa, but they never get broken up. They never get regulated. They never get, anything significant happen to them. So on one hand, this is a big cover up. It's the same thing with Facebook. Facebook, basically stole an election along with these other companies. And as long as they said, oops, we did it, we won't do it again, then we moved on. So this is another one of those things, but look at what they did. The Biden administration, Google admitted to the following to House Judiciary Committee. The Biden administration pressured Google to censor Americans and remove content that did not violate YouTube's policies. The Biden administration's censorship pressure was unacceptable and wrong. Google knew it was unacceptable and wrong. Everyone knew, and everyone did it. But we have laws. We have a constitution. No, you don't. There's power and there's no power. That's it. That's all there is. Mao said it best. All political power comes from the barrel of a gun. The only constitution is only enforceable when someone's willing to enforce it. And when people just voluntarily choose not to, because the people who are supposed to enforce it, the government, are the ones asking you to break the Constitution, What do you do? Google works internationally. You don't think they've figured out the fact that rules change from country to country because people can make up the rules as they go? There's no there's no sanctity in the law. There's just power. The Biden administration's censorship was unacceptable and wrong, but they did it anyways at scale. Public debate should never come at the expense of relying on authorities. So because you're an authority, I don't have a chance to ask my questions. I don't have a chance to express my doubts and get answers. Okay. What did we learn yesterday? The one thing that you know you're in a PSYOP is when information has to be silenced. That's it. The company will never use third-party fact checkers. Apparently they didn't use them before, but other companies did, but they won't ever use them. Europe's censorship laws target American companies and threaten American speech, including the removal of lawful conflict. Now, if you want to know how absolutely asinine this is, to a degree that is hard to fathom, this whole settlement and agreement came from a law firm called, and you're going to love this, King and Spalding. King and Spalding. So they wrote this letter. This is where those bullet points are taken out of. They wrote this letter. It's a little bit bigger, but they go into, the senior Biden administration officials, including White House officials, conducted repeated and sustained outreach to Alphabet, that's the Google parent company, and pressured the company regarding certain user-generated content related to the COVID-19 pandemic that did not violate its policies. While the company continued to develop and enforce its policies independently, Biden administration officials continued to press the company to remove non-violative user-generated content, right? It is unacceptable and wrong. This is from King and Spalding, from Google's attorneys. It is unacceptable and wrong when any government, including the Biden administration, attempts to dictate how a company moderates content, and the company has consistently fought against those efforts on the First Amendment grounds. No, you didn't. No matter the political atmosphere, YouTube will continue to enable free speech. All right, so it's a big mea culpa. But here's the thing. I really want you to see this. So we've got King and Spalding. So now I'm going to go to Grok. Okay, grok.com. Ask this here. What is Christopher Wray's involvement with King and Spalding law? Whoop. What is Christopher Wray's involvement in the King and Spalding law firm? Christopher Wray, the current director of the FBI. He's not the current director of the FBI. You guys, here we go. AI, you're hallucinating again. Current director was, now this is was, but since he's not the current director of the FBI, we can't even trust any of this. I can't trust that Grok knows what time it is, what date it is. Christopher Wray, the current director of the FBI, was partner at a multinational law firm, King and Spalding, often stylized as King and Spalding, for about 12 years. So Christopher Wray was a partner at the law firm King and Spalding that represents Google, where the government was pressuring Google to censor Americans. We're talking prima facie First Amendment violations. And the attorney that used to be a partner for the law firm that Google uses for matters like this is the director of the FBI. What are the chances, if you're Google, you think that the FBI is going to come in and defend Google from the government when their law firm partner is running the FBI who would do that investigation, but now he's over there? There are no laws. There are only cops. Okay? There are only people in power. Oh my gosh. So anyways, yeah, so there's that. Since becoming FBI director. Okay, so watch this. Christopher Wray, the current FBI director of the FBI. So we're going to ask Grok, who is the current FBI director? Okay, now we're just going on a derivation for the show. This is going to be fun. Okay, current FBI, Kash Patel is a current FBI director succeeding Chris Wray. Did you lie to me in your first response saying Christopher Wray was the current director? Why were you inaccurate? No, I didn't lie to you. I'm not capable of intentional deception, as my responses are generated based on the information available to me at the time of the interaction. In my first response, I referred to Christopher Wray as the current FBI director because that was accurate up until early 2005. You little wiggler. Okay. Sorry, guys. I don't even know if you're interested in that kind of stuff, but do not trust AI. I spend, I'm as much as anybody else on the internet, spend a little bit of time asking Grok questions because it sure is convenient, but it's nice to know a few facts like Christopher Wray is not the current director of the FBI, but we can rely on the fact that he was a partner at King & Spalding. That I knew independently of AI. Anyways, yes, Sapphire Patriot, good morning to you too. Welcome. Okay, so that is kind of freaky. That's what happened. Parler got deleted. Trump got taken off all the social media companies. Millions of people got their X and Facebook accounts deleted because they had association with Q or they retweeted Mike Lee too much or anything like that. You had lots of people that were directly targeted by the FBI. Guys, anything that Trump does to Antifa, calling them a domestic terror organization, it's just a tried and true proven pathway. They've done it. You're not breaking the seal on anything. Now, the wicked will slay the wicked. I got no business with it. I don't want to be involved in it. I'm not a prosecutor. I'm nothing. I'm a peasant. I'm concerned about making sure my family has enough tomorrow. I'm making sure that my community is taken care of. It starts with me. I got to fix me. How do you fix the country? I fix myself, and I pray to heaven that everyone else fixes their own problems. That's the basis of Christianity. I can't look to others. I have to work out my own salvation with fear and trembling. I need the same thing. We can't keep looking to government for our solutions because what did I just show you we're looking at? You're looking at a blob of law firms and individuals that bounce in between law firms and corporations, and they violate your rights at the most basic level, freedom of speech. And they get all harpy about, Jimmy Kimmel, who says a lie on TV, and then they decide they don't want to broadcast him because of public interest on public airways. He wasn't being taken off a YouTube channel. You got to realize I was censored, right? Our entire Spotify library, our entire podcast got completely removed from Spotify. Poof, gone one day. No answers, no explanations, gone. I fell into that category. There was nothing we said on that podcast that would trigger any kind of censorship. And how do I know it? I've reposted it. Didn't even get a flag. Nothing. It was completely done as a political hit, right? Totally done as a political hit. So back to this deal with Donald Trump in the UN, right? So something else happened, a couple things this morning. The political violence, the reason I played Charlie Kirk, I decided to do that, and I didn't pull the news clips because it was developing. But as I was coming into the studio this morning, there was shooters in, I think it was LA, shooting off the roof of an ICE building or somewhere around an ICE building. People were killed, and apparently the shooter on the roof took his own life. This assassination thing, guys, we don't know where we go. And I am not by any means, I'd never want to be the guy that it's gonna get, I don't want to be that guy. It's gonna get worse. But we don't know the future. We are on the brink of a lot of very questionable things. Civil war, what does that look like in 2025? I mean, nobody believes it's going to be muskets again, right? Like, we're not there. Like, do you really believe a civil war in 2025 is a bunch of Wisconsin deer hunters, going into the streets? They're just not wearing their hunter orange. They're just all in camo, and they got their bolt actions and their lever actions, and they're good to go. Like, largest army in the world. Do you think that's what the Civil War looks like? No. The Civil War is going to be fought how? Through psychological operations, through censorship online, through media, what do they call it? Compartmentalization, media tranching, right? Siloing, where they put you in media silos, right? Dallas, Sapphire Patriot. Thank you. Dallas is where the shooting was happening. Okay. Pray the Rosary Daily said, Trump reposted a tweet I sent and Jack Posobiec replied to me and I was deleted from Twitter immediately. See, there's exactly what I'm talking about, right? This is how this Civil war is being fought. It's being fought for hearts and minds, right? It's being fought in the digital sphere, and it's being fought at our kitchen tables. This is the other thing you need to connect with the Maha movement. This civil war is being fought at our kitchen tables because our enemies are feeding us poison. Hear me again. This is the thing they don't want to say, but when you read the literature about Maha, you find out very quickly our enemies, the people who are opposed to me living. I'm not saying Venezuela. I'm not saying Brazil or Iran. I'm saying our enemies, the enemies of we the people, the peasants, the ones who just want to live here in every nation around the world. We are being poisoned by our enemies at our dinner tables. And then on top of that, we're being poisoned by drugs that come into the country. Okay, so you got all this stuff going on. This UN talk that Donald Trump gave mentions all of this. Okay, he mentions this directly. Maybe not the food on your table, but he mentions this ongoing war. And this speech that he gave at the UN was huge. And of course, all around this UN speech, there's all kinds of shenanigans going on. One of the things that started happening was the Secret Service just busted up some huge cellular deal that could have blocked out all the cell phones in New York City, as well as captured all the data off the cell phones. So let's listen to this news and then let's talk about the ramifications of this.
Could have crippled New York City. I mean, get your mind around what we just faced. The Secret Service discovered, uncovered, and took down a massive hidden telecom network just a few miles away from the United Nations headquarters. Agents found hundreds of SIM servers and 100,000 SIM cards clustered together. Investigators say that system was powerful enough to black out cell service throughout the entire city and also had surveillance capabilities. Initial analysis of those SIM cards reportedly identifying ties to at least one foreign nation, as well as links to criminals already known to United States law enforcement.
Harris, federal agents say this telecom threat could have been a catastrophe for this city of 8 million people, which, as you mentioned, now has world leaders from every part of the globe gathered here for the United Nations General Assembly. The threat was uncovered as part of the Secret Service's day-to-day work protecting U.S. government officials. Agents raided multiple locations within 35 minutes of the UN, uncovering a network of 300 servers and more than 100,000 SIM cards, tools capable of blasting out millions of anonymous text, jamming 911 lines, and blacking out cell towers. The special agent in charge of New York City's field office spoke about the danger this telecom threat posed.
You can't use text message, you can't use your cell phone. And if you coupled that with some sort of other event, right, associated with UNGA or, use your imagination there, they could be catastrophic to the city.
Investigators stress there's no evidence of a direct plot to disrupt the UN General Assembly, but the Secret Service right now believes foreign actors and criminals already known to law enforcement were using this system to send encrypted messages to cartels, organized crime groups, terrorist organizations.
Wow. So imagine if some event happened in New York, like some kind of, disaster. I hate to use the word terror attack, don't to jinx it, knock on wood, but some disaster happened and cell service was down. If you've ever been to New York, it's a concrete jungle. There's if everybody comes out of the buildings, it could be just masses of people. Like the chaos could be absolutely untold. And speaking of chaos, one of the things you always got to be aware of is the chaos that, is the chaos that happens around, what's going on here? Chaos that happens around your investments. Did you know the biggest threat to your retirement is not something that's talked about often? Our increased longevity in America means default retirement accounts like IRAs, 401ks, and TSPs may not suffice. If you have over $100,000 in your retirement account, get instant access to a 2-minute report from the Augusta Precious Metals that reveals the one step you can take to secure your financial future. Text SAFE to 35052 today. Text SAFE to 3502 today. So that is Augusta Gold, and they work with or Augusta Precious Metals, I should say. Augusta Precious Metals. So in a lot of chaos, definitely get your retirement secured. Okay, so imagine a situation in New York like that where the cell service goes down and then there's some element of chaos. And on top of that, it's the UN General Assembly. You have thousands of leaders from around the world that can't communicate. On top of that, just the sheer amount of raw data that could be collected. So it sounds like a big old fat sabotage thing is going on, which is interesting because that's exactly what was implied. We read earlier from the New York Times talking about this, but this comes from the Times. not the New York Times, just the Times. To mark Trump's arrival, UN staff members have joked that they may turn off the escalators and elevators to simply tell him they ran out of money, so he has to walk up the stairs. And this was actually echoed by Biden State Department spokesman Ned Price. If you guys remember Ned Price, he's one of those like every time he talked, every time his lips were moving, he was lying. he was better than Peppermint Patty, Jen Psaki, and Karine Jean-Pierre in the fact that he kind of had this, I don't know how to explain it. You could almost tell that Jen Psaki and Karine Jean-Pierre were lying from their gut, but cognitively knew what they were saying was a lie. This guy, it's like all in one. It's like his brain and his body knows it's a lie.
On that escalator, and the escalator stopped. Well, I imagine one of the reasons that escalator stopped is because his administration has withheld hundreds of millions of dollars in funding over his first term in office and during the first 8 months or so of his current term to the UN. And the UN itself is falling apart on that escalator. And
so the UN's falling apart. They don't have any money. So as a punishment, they're gonna make him look bad on the escalator, get him winded, and then go have him give a speech without his teleprompter. In fact, this whole thing is actually a pretty serious concern. Carolyn Levitt's telling us the Secret Service is like legitimately looking into
Caroline, it does appear to be sabotage with the escalator and the teleprompter. What is the White House going to do about that?
Well, Jesse, that's definitely what it appears to be to me. And that's why I put out a statement earlier. There was some concerning reporting over the weekend from the London Times, as you pointed out, that UN globalist staffers were basically plotting to set up the president of the United States. And first it was the escalator, then it was the teleprompter, and then Katie Pavlich from Town Hall, who we offered a seat in the press pool to cover the president's historic speech today, noticed that the audio inside of the room was much lower and different for the president of the United States than the previous speaker. So when you put all of this together, it doesn't look like a coincidence to me. And I know that we have people, including the United States Secret Service, who are looking into this to try to get to the bottom of it. And if we find that these were UN staffers who were purposefully trying to literally trip up the president and the first lady of the United States, well, there better be accountability for those people. And I will personally see to it, Jesse.
Good.
I don't know why I find myself smiling every time I hear people threaten accountability. I'm like, yeah, maybe it's just me. It feels like accountability goes one way. I mean, if you try to shoot the president, then they'll get you. They'll let you go. But this idea of accountability, it's like, dude, you got guys taking accountability for a weapon kidnapping plot, but yet the FBI agents who really planned it are still out running on their own. Okay, so now we're going to get into some clips with Donald Trump actually at the UN. I don't have these clips in chronological order. I listened to the entire speech yesterday. It was about 53 minutes or something like that. Holy smokes. Poof, that guy's a smoke show. He came in hardcore, okay? In fact, I'll just play this for you so you can understand exactly how hardcore he came in. This was the response directly after his speech. I'm only going to play a couple clips, and some of the clips may or may not overlap, but this was the response that Donald Trump got right after this speech. So just so you know how impactful this was.
I believe, the most eviscerating speech you'll probably ever hear. People will be talking about this speech for not only years, but decades to come. A lot of delegates in that United Nations building are going to need defibrillators, ambulances. They're going to need stretchering out of there. That was a full-scale frontal assault on everything United Nations stands for. There's so much to go at. It's impossible to know where to start. I believe
they are going to need a defibrillator after that one. A full-scale frontal assault on everything the UN stands for. So let's listen to a couple highlights, okay? It's all worth it. Every minute of listening to Donald Trump here. He lights him up. He goes from the escalator to the teleprompter to I was going to build this building for you, but didn't use me, and now it's falling apart, to migration and crime. I mean, absolutely devastated. Just dropped nukes all over the UN, called them feckless, weak, questioned why they should even exist. Oh, maybe if I can get some audio for you here. Oh, I have to do that thing where I actually share the screen. I can't just play it like when Ron's here.
Countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border. Millions of people came through that southern border. Just a year ago, millions and millions of people were pouring in, 25 million altogether over the 4 years of the incompetent Biden administration. And now we have it stopped, totally stopped. In fact, they're not even coming anymore because they know they can't get through. But what took place is totally unacceptable. The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them. In the United States, we reject the idea that mass numbers of people from foreign lands can be permitted to travel halfway around the world, trample our borders, violate our sovereignty, cause unmitigated crime, and deplete our social safety net. We have reasserted that America belongs to the American people, and I encourage all countries to take their own stand in defense of their citizens as well. You have to do that because I see it. I'm not mentioning names. I see it, and I can call every single one of them out. You're destroying your countries. They're being destroyed. Europe is in serious trouble. They've been invaded by a force of illegal aliens like nobody's ever seen before.
Those are strong words. Okay. The UN is supposed to stop these crises, not fund them and encourage them. Okay. Here's another one where he goes and he rips up the Green New Deal and Obama directly for the whole climate scam. He really spent a lot of time on this. He talked about carbon footprints being complete scams.
Intentions. And they're heading down a path of total destruction. You know, the carbon footprint was a big, big thing a few years ago. I remember hearing about the carbon footprint, and then President Obama would get into Air Force One, a massive Boeing 747, and not a new one, an old one with old engines that spew everything into the atmosphere. He'd talk about the carbon footprint, we must do so. Then he'd get in and he'd fly from Washington to Hawaii to play a round of golf. And then he'd get back onto that big, beautiful plane and he'd fly back and he'd talk about, again, global warming and the carbon footprint. It's a con job. At extreme cost and expense, Europe reduced its own carbon footprint by 37%. Think of that. Congratulations, Europe. Great job. It cost yourself a lot of jobs, a lot of factories closed, but you reduced the carbon footprint by 37%. However, for all of that sacrifice and much more, it's been totally wiped out and then some by a global increase of 54%. Much of it coming from China and other countries that are thriving around China, which now produces more CO2 than all the other developed nations in the world. So all of these countries are working so hard on the carbon footprint, which is nonsense, by the way. It's nonsense. You know, it's interesting. In the United States, we have still radicalized environmentalists, and they want the factories to stop. Everything should stop. No more cows. We don't want cows anymore. I guess they want to kill all the cows. They want to do things that are just unbelievable, and you have it too.
You want to do things that are just unbelievable. Carbon footprint, total scam. He went on to talk some more about that, and basically just how, you know, there's really no global warming. You guys, in fact, he calls out the UN because there was a resolution that said by the year 2000, polar ice caps are going to melt. And he's like, you guys are nuts, right? Here we are 25 years later. Nothing's, in fact, last I read, ice caps are growing. Okay. Here he went and he got after the European countries and countries all around the world for crime and the increased crime and how sometimes over half of our prisons are filled with people that are not even native to the country where they're being held.
According to the Council of Europe in 2024, almost 50% of inmates in German prisons were foreign nationals or migrants. In Austria, the number was 53% of the people in prisons were from places that weren't from where they are now. In Greece, the number was 54%. And in Switzerland, beautiful Switzerland, 72% of the people in prisons are from outside of Switzerland. When your prisons are filled with so-called asylum seekers who repaid kindness, and that's what they did. They repaid kindness with crime. It's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now.
I can testify in the United States in the federal prison system, if it's not 50%, it's close. If it's not 50%, it's close. 50% of the people that are in the federal prison system are illegals, I would say, close to that. It's a huge number. Here, Donald Trump goes over Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, and calls him out for bringing Sharia law to London. Now, later there was a fact checker who clarified, well, we don't have Sharia law. What they have is they have like 85 Sharia courts that are civil courts in London. So England is allowing the Sharia courts to operate and regulate civil matters, which is just one step away from criminal matters. Because if you understand anything about how the system's built, criminal is just a subchapter of civil. So, that's how it works. Rules of criminal procedure fit inside the rules of civil procedure. They just change some of the adjectives. So anyways, it's a big deal. So he's calling that out.
I look at London, where you have a terrible mayor, terrible mayor. And it's been so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law. But you're in a different country. You can't do that. Both the immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will be the death of Western Europe if something is not done immediately. This cannot be sustained. What makes the world so beautiful is that each country is unique. But to stay this way, every sovereign nation must have the right to control their own borders. You have the right to control your borders, as we do now, and to limit the sheer numbers of migrants entering their countries and paid for by the people of that nation that were there and that built that particular nation at the time. They put their blood, sweat, tears, money into that country, and now they're being ruined. Proud nations must be allowed to protect their communities and prevent their societies from being overwhelmed by people they have never seen before, with different customs, religions, with different everything. Where migrants have violated laws, lodged false asylum claims, or claimed refugee status for illegitimate reasons, they should, in many cases, be immediately sent home. And while we will always have a big heart for places and people that are struggling and truly compassionate, answers will be given. We have to solve the problem, and we have to solve it in their countries, not create new problems in our countries. And we are very helpful to a lot of countries that are just not able to send their people anymore. They used to send them to us in caravans of 25, 30,000 people each. These massive caravans of people pouring into our country, totally unchecked and unvetted. But not anymore. According to the Council of Europe in 2024, almost 50% of inmates in German prisons.
So then he goes and talks about the prison rates, which we already heard that. He just came after these folks. Okay, so this is from GB News. I think this is GB News, and this is their reactions to it. You can tell a lot by the reactions, because we can go through and listen to the speech, and it's, like 35% rally. It was like 35% shellacking. It was like 10% comedy. He kind of had a little bit of everything going on in the speech. And for those of us that listen to a lot of Donald Trump, it was Donald Trump. He was being pretty strong, but it was the gravitas of the moment at the UN. So the reactions are where you can really tell, it's the reactions where you can really tell what Donald Trump got done.
A lot of jaws were literally on the floor. Certainly Martin Daubney and myself it was quite incredible. So nearly an hour, he began by eviscerating the United Nations. He said, what is the purpose of the United Nations. He said that they write strongly worded letters, but they're empty words because they don't result in anything. He then went on to criticize the countries who have recognized Palestine as a state, including Britain, of course. He said that it was a reward for the Hamas atrocities, including October the 7th. Then he went on to mass migration. He had a very simple message. Your countries are going to hell. Europe is in serious trouble. He said that the globalist migration agenda had failed, and he talked about prisoner statistics in Europe. He said that foreign nationals made up 74% of the prison population in Switzerland, 54% in Greece. I fact-checked those stats. They are actually correct. The average across the EU, though, is about 20%. And then he went on to net zero. He talked about climate change, said it was a scam. He said that renewables were a joke, that they don't work. He said he hoped that the Prime Minister was listening. Talked about the North Sea. He said both the immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will be the death of Western Europe if something isn't done immediately. This cannot be sustained. It reminded me rather of when J.D. Vance went to the Munich Security Conference, and what he had to say to Europe went down like a cup of cold sick. I think this was similar, but magnified many, many times. And the irony, of course, was that Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, had been making his keynote speech at conference. He was right in the middle of bad-mouthing Nigel Farage and bad-mouthing Donald Trump. And then, of course, when Donald Trump began to speak, all of the broadcasters went immediately to listen to what he had to say. But it was...
So some liberal over in Europe got big-footed by Trump. Go figure. Funny. Oh, the reaction to it is enough, man. I mean, you could see what they're after there. Okay, so this is Secretary Rubio. And, the impression here is that Donald Trump's rogue. Nobody wants to work with him. The European partners don't like him. And Rubio, as a Secretary of State, is just like, that's not the case.
Well, look, I didn't hear the entirety of the interview. I can only tell you that on both of those issues, on the case of Russia, Ukraine, the only leader in the world that has any chance of bringing it to an end is President Trump, which is why he has put more time and energy into it than anybody else. All of these other countries, including Turkey, by the way, are begging us to be involved. They want us to be involved. Look, these people go out and say what they want to say, but at the end of the day, when they want something done, they want to come to the White House. President Erdogan is coming to the White House this week to meet with the president. They all come to the White House. They all want to speak to President Trump. They all want President Trump to fix it. So they can say whatever they want to say. The truth of the matter is that we have leaders. We have meetings going on today that we have leaders begging to be a part of it. They are calling, saying, can we be included? Can you bring us in? Can you get me 5 minutes to shake the president's hand? He is the indispensable leader in the world right now. He is the only one who has any chance of not just brokering a deal to end the war with Russia and Ukraine, but also bringing about the war that's going and getting all the hostages released in Gaza. And I think he's put more time and energy into peace proposals and peace initiatives than anybody else in the world. And he's had the most success of anybody else in the world. He doesn't get a lot of credit, but let's not forget the DRC and Rwanda had a war going on. It's the president that's brokered that. Azerbaijan and Armenia. It's the president that brought that about. Thailand and Cambodia. Right. It's the president that brought that end of that about. India and Pakistan. That's just four right off the top of my head in the last few months. And the president's the one that did that, not any other leader in the world and not the UN.
Yeah. So Trump is getting it done. And at the end of the day, real leaders understand what Trump's doing. They get it. It's the fake leaders that don't get it, right? It's the fake leaders that don't understand what we're really in. What we played at the very beginning with Charlie Kirk. Like, this is a fight. This is a battle. This is a war over our civilization and whether we're going to hold on to it or not. This right here, Donald Trump, yesterday pretty much washed his hands of the Ukraine war. This is what he says. So he said this. He says, after getting to know and getting to know and fully understand the Ukraine-Russia military and economic situation, and after seeing the economic trouble it is causing Russia, I think Ukraine. Now, this makes me cringe, but from a political standpoint, this is brilliant. This is brilliant. This might be the door number 3, the only door that avoids U.S. involvement in war and kind of burns this thing out. Who knows? Okay. I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form. With time, patience, and the financial support of Europe, and in particular NATO, the original borders from where this war started is very much an option. Why not? Russia has been fighting aimlessly for 3.5 years, a war that should have taken a real military power. Now he's being diminutive towards Russia. A real military power less than a week to win. This is not distinguishing Russia. In fact, it is very much making them look like a, quote, paper tiger. When the people living in Moscow and all of the great cities, towns, and districts all throughout Russia find out what is really going on with this war, the fact that it's almost impossible for them to get gasoline through the long lines that are being formed, and all of the other things that are taking place in their war economy, where most of the money is being spent on fighting Ukraine, which has great spirit and only getting better, Ukraine would be able to take back their country in its original form, and who knows, maybe even go further than that. Putin and Russia are in big economic trouble, and this is the time for Ukraine to act. In any event, I wish both countries well, and will continue to supply weapons to NATO for NATO to do what they want with them. Good luck to all. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. So this is being captioned as Donald Trump is essentially washing his hands of the Trump-Russia-Ukraine war. That'll be pretty interesting. Marco Rubio said this about Trump's patience with all of this and how it's running out.
The president is a very patient man. He's very committed to peace, but his patience is not infinite. And as he has said repeatedly, he has before him the opportunity and the options of imposing additional economic costs on the Russian Federation if necessary in order to bring this to an end. He also has before him the option, as he has already chosen to do in some circumstances, to sell defensive weaponry and potentially offensive weaponry so that Ukraine can defend itself from this assault by purchasing that weaponry. So I'm here to say to the Security Council, the United States remains as committed as it has ever been to a peaceful resolution to this dangerous conflict. But there will come a moment in which we will have to conclude that perhaps there is no interest in a peaceful resolution. And then the president has before him real options, which he intends to pursue, as he has made clear today in some of the messages he has put out. So I strongly urge the Security Council, the member states here, and those who are not part of this as well, to do everything in their power, and including the Russian Federation, to do everything within their power, and the Ukrainian side for that matter as well, but all sides, to bring this war to an end before it becomes something that will last another 3 or 4 years, lead to more destruction, both economic and at the same time and loss of life and loss of property and loss of futures. This war needs to end. But if it does not, if there is no path to peace in the short term, then the United States and President Donald J. Trump will take the steps necessary to impose costs for continued aggression.
They want to keep those costs as economic costs. So as we're watching two juggernauts fight, just imagine there is some juggernauts. I got to make sure this goes right. Hold on a second. Sometimes I wish I could just hit pause. Back in the day when I was just recording all by myself, I used to kind of hit pause if I had to regroup my thoughts. Okay, so just like you're watching two juggernauts fight, Ukraine, not really a juggernaut. They're kind of like the Cleveland Browns, I guess. And then you've got Russia fighting, right? You've got football. Hey, football fanatics, are you ready for some primetime NFL action? Tune in to Westwood One for all of the gridiron glory you crave, from jaw-dropping touchdowns to game-changing plays. Don't miss a moment of the excitement. Catch every snap, every tackle, and every victory on Westwood One. You can listen to the NFL on NFL app, on the Westwood One Sports app, on westwoodonesports.com via Westwood One station streams, or by asking Alexa to open Westwood One Sports. If it's the NFL, it's on Westwood One. Cool. All right. I finished my 3 ad reads for the day. You know, it's just like going through the motions. You just got to get the ad reads out there, get it done. And those are some good companies that support us and support free speech. Okay. So now there was some speech. Let's see here. There was some positive inflection on this speech that Donald Trump gave. And I want to kind of tease, because we are going to go into the private today. And when we go into the private, we're going to talk about killing narco drug traffickers. Okay. And we're going to talk about arresting domestic terrorists in the form of Antifa. So when we go into the private, we're going to be talking about that. But before we do that, let's wrap up a little bit with some of the response that we got from the different media outlets. So we've played some of the responses that were like, oh my gosh, Donald Trump attacked the UN. There was also a response that was pretty positive.
Moving on to American matters, Donald Trump, we have not been able to get him off our screens tonight because his speech to the United Nations, which is absolutely sensational, no teleprompter, no escalator, as you happen to point out on the way in there too. But what an incredible speech. He pretty much went after everyone on net zero, on open immigration. What's the reaction been in DC?
Well, no teleprompter, no filter. We know that about Donald Trump, right? And actually, I thought it was just quite beautiful. I don't think there is any concern here, actually, amongst the government in Washington, D.C. about what was said. I think, as he said at the start of the speech, where you don't have a teleprompter, you talk from the heart. And he went for all the big issues, didn't he? And in fact, there was obviously the technical issue of not just the teleprompter, but also the escalator. And Caroline Leavitt, the spokesperson for the White House, has just tweeted in the last few moments, actually, a comment from the Times newspaper preceding the speech, in which it said that there are UN representatives working behind the scenes, joking that they might turn off the escalators and then say they've got no money left. Sorry, Trump, we can't turn on the escalator. So she's now saying, if that is the case, somebody needs to be sacked. So, you know, they don't let this stuff go, this administration. They are so loyal to their president that if it is found that somebody did turn off the escalator, the escalator in the background behind the scenes, then they will want somebody to lose their job over it. That is what they are like.
But Bev, we've got that clip, actually. Can we just show it to the audience so they can see exactly what happened at that escalator? Let's play that for you now.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, President Trump. Good morning, Trump.
The escalators next to it are totally working. They were working right before, and they just get clipped.
Well, there you can see Donald Trump walking up the escalator. Walking. And you know, interesting, Donald Trump does have a thing about stairs. I think he's got a problem going downstairs. He does get nervous, hence why he always tries to hold his wife's hand, Melania
like
Trump, First Lady. Well, I wouldn't describe her like a cow.
No. Right, okay. That is not what Paul Cox was saying. Cows can't walk downstairs.
Indeed. Well, that's true, actually. Well, Donald Trump pointed out a series of hilarious errors at the United Nations General Assembly, including that faulty escalator that you just saw and the blank teleprompter. We've obviously seen that clip there. Bev, has there been more reaction off the back of that by the American public? Because I think you pointed out important. The American administration has pointed out something important. It seemed very manufactured, didn't it? It just switched off as soon as he stepped on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I say, Caroline Leavitt has made that allegation. The thing about Donald Trump is, you know, he's 79 years old. Remember that. It's easy to forget that he's nearly 80. His energy is off the scale. I mean, I traveled with him for a couple of days, as you know, last week, and I don't think he sleeps. I genuinely don't think he sleeps. So when something like that happens, you can almost see it in his eyes. He's thinking, I've got a lot to deal with. The last thing I need is an escalator that isn't working. And it probably slightly played into why he just loaded his gun when he went up on that lectern and just let them all have it, gave them both barrels of everything that he thought about, everything that he thinks about, and everything he thinks about the UN.
You can't keep that guy down. I mean, literally, you can turn off the escalator. He'll just walk up it. He's not like Biden, or he'll trip his way up it. So this was Steve Bannon. This is Steve Bannon and his assessment of this. Again, some of these news items, right? Trump speaking at the UN, the stack of the Google revelation. I mean, we just touched that. We could talk for weeks about how your rights were violated and on and on and on. Listen, I'm so far past that, right? There's no laws. There's only cops. There's only force and power. That's it. That's all there is. You know, when you really get involved with this stuff, you see it for just that. So here's Steve Bannon and his commentary on it. And obviously, you know, he's our spirit animal. If you're a populist, love Steve Bannon. This was his take on it. Got to click a couple buttons.
Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the United States.
After her announcement, no applause. President of the United States, I don't think I've ever seen a harder throwdown in my life with the work of the United Nations. President Trump really went in. And if you look at it over the last 3 days, the fiery speech he gave at Charlie Kirk's memorial service, or the remarks he gave at Charlie Kirk's memorial service yesterday in the Roosevelt Room, with really an off-the-chain, full frontal attack on Big Pharma, and then you go to today at the United Nations, just out and out, right up in their grill. Of course, there was a few sidebars to Lula and other things like that, but that's the noise, not the signal. With me, I do think Charlie Kirk's assassination execution has unleashed something in the president. It's extraordinary. Maybe about time on earth. I'm telling you, absolutely extraordinary. And you're 100% correct. He went twice as long because the second part of that pivot was absolutely, Alex nailed it. He put him on notice. This is like Christ going into the temple, putting him on notice. I know who you are, and I know what you've done, and it's evil and it's wrong, and I'm stopping it. The President of the United States throws down as hard as you can possibly throw down. Oh, and by the way, after last night, he went in and signed the EO on Antifa as a terrorist organization.
Okay.
Assembly.
So let's bring this all the way back around to the beginning when we played that clip of Charlie Kirk. When we played that chip of Charlie Kirk, Charlie made one thing very clear. We are in a battle, and it's undetermined who's going to win or who's not going to win. We cannot, as peasants, we cannot take for granted what has been. We can't just believe that just because it's been this way in our lifetimes, it will continue to be that way. The reality is governments come and go. The forms of government change from monarchy to communism and communalism to, savage anarchy. It changes. We have to live here. That's the whole point as a peasant. It's not about, having wealth that's dependent on a system to keep that wealth propped up. It's literally about survival. It's about functions of the family, what's natural, what's real, what's self-evident. Okay. Christianity is based around what's self-evident. It explains some of the social conditions that we have. It binds us together. It stretches across space and time ideas so that things I build today, my grandchildren can pick up and advance that cause, right? To understand the function of Christianity and religion in general in society is to see the real matrix that things are built on, right? Everything that happens in government and stuff like that, you can have, for example, Christianity can have democracy. It can work with monarchy. It can work with all kinds of different forms of government. But Christianity is what governs me, the individual. It's what gives me a moral compass to decide right and wrong. It's what tells me that when a foreign person comes into my area and rapes my daughter, that it's wrong, that I'm not in the wrong because I didn't volunteer my daughter to the rapist, right? This idea of weaponizing your virtue. Oh, these are asylum seekers. Just let them come in and steal from your stores, right? They're so downtrodden. It's the opposite. Christianity gives me the measure by which I should judge, the measure by which I'm comfortable if I get judged myself, right? That's the idea. Milo Yiannopoulos, who's no paragon of, moral virtue by any means, but is a deep thinker, thinks about this and considers it deeply. So for the public side of the show, I'm going to end it on this today. This is what we're fighting for. This is the civilizational clash that we're in, whether you like it or not, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, people are engaged in this battle. And so where do you fit? What part are you going to play?
It doesn't matter if you agree with the literal truth of Christianity or not. The founders did, and they made a country for people who did. And if you don't agree with that, you don't like God, or you don't see why too much freedom is leading us all to hate and kill each other, and you don't appreciate that we should not only restore Christianity in culture, but require it in public life, you should go to Canada. You should go somewhere else where there's a moral architecture built into the law But here, it doesn't work without God. And when you don't have him, when instead people replace prayer and the rituals of the church with antidepressants, with compound interest, with games and drink and drugs and fornication, kind of thing he does with his wife, offering her around town like she's common property. America doesn't work when we behave that way, because we'll all just end up murdering each other.
He's right. He's right. A lot of our moral virtues guard us against our greatest vices, right? A lot of the things we teach little children, basic stuff that as adults we go, we attack against, that's the underpinning that keeps us from killing each other. As peasants, this is where our focus has to be. What we control is the family, right? Prop it up, support it, give it the right virtues, give it the right parables, give it the right ingredients to be successful, that the family can last through some storms. The strength of a nation is based on the strength of the family. The family holds the government in check. It's that simple. That's what we're up against. Charlie Kirk understood it. He dedicated himself to the Christian life. He expressed his politics through his Christian life, and that's what he's being remembered for. And that's the cross that we're asked to pick up, right? To advance civilization, the idea through space and time, the individual divinity of the soul. That's what we have to project forward, that you are worth living for. You alone produce the meaning and cause, right? The meaning and cause doesn't come from the collective, that your good is not defined by others. It's a long-standing definition, and you can achieve it and live a good life. Okay. Shantini says, totally agree, and I wish I could do it all over again and do it right. Yep, we all wish we could go back and live life right, but as I just was expressing to my friend Earl, there's no rearview mirror, right? The best revenge is a life well lived. It's just about moving forward. Okay, I need to jump over to private because I've got to clock some private hours to meet my goals for the month. So those of you who joined us for the live show today, I really appreciate it. Had a good audience sticking around today. I feel the show grow. Thank you so much. While I've got everybody on, please, if you're on Rumble, please, I'm begging you to do this for me. Go down in and hit repost, right? Hit repost and hit like. If everybody on here hits like on the show, I'll have the most likes I've ever had on any independent show. And if everybody hits repost tomorrow, we'll double our numbers. So please, please, please consider hitting repost and like. And also don't forget to visit leftbehindandwithout.org. Please consider helping some children of incarcerated parents. It's our way of giving back, or I should say, it's our way of giving back. And of course, please do not forget to visit peasantsperspective.com. And tomorrow we are going to be doing Ignite for 1776live.us. You can follow the link below and register for the webinar. So I'll be jumping over to Rumble Premium. I look forward to seeing who sticks around, and we'll go from there. Talk to you guys that aren't joining us in private tomorrow. Bye.